The morning light comes slowly through the tall windows of the National Archives reading room in College Park, Maryland. The temperature inside is held at 68 degrees. The humidity is held at 40%. These numbers do not change. They have not changed in 31 years. A researcher named Diane sets down her satchel at table 7. She removes a pair of cotton gloves from a small plastic case. She places them beside a yellow legal pad and 3 sharpened pencils. Pens are not permitted. She has been coming to this room for 19 years. She knows the rhythm of the place, the slow hum of the climate system, the soft clearing of throats, the careful turning of pages by people who have learned that paper, like memory, can tear. On this particular morning, Diane is waiting for a document, a specific document, a State Department report that was scheduled for public release on the 15th of March. It is now the 12th of November. The report has finally arrived. She signs the request slip. She waits. When the archivist returns, the folder is thinner than she expected. She opens it. She begins to read. And within the first 90 seconds, she understands that something has happened to this document, something that does not happen to ordinary documents, something that, in 19 years of research, she has seen only twice before. The report was 247 pages when it was drafted. It is 247 pages now. Every page is present. Every page number is intact. But across those pages, the black redaction bars cover not a paragraph here and a sentence there. They cover 40% of the total text. Not 5%, not 10%, not the 12% that is considered routine for documents touching on diplomatic communications. 40%. Diane counts the redacted passages on the first 10 pages. She counts them again. She writes a single number on her legal pad. She underlines it twice. The report had been promised in March. It was released in November. And when you hear what the missing 40% contained, you will understand why 8 months were not enough time to prepare its delivery. The State Department's annual review of foreign assistance compliance is not, by any measure, a famous document. It does not trend. It does not generate cable news segments. It is a procedural artifact mandated by statute, required for the continued disbursement of certain categories of international aid. It is read in any given year by approximately 400 people, congressional staffers, inspector general analysts, a handful of academics. Diane is one of them. She has read every version of this report since 2007. She knows what a normal redaction pattern looks like. She knows what the black bars usually cover: names of foreign nationals who cooperated with American officials, specific dollar amounts tied to ongoing negotiations, operational details that, if disclosed, would compromise sources, the standard categories, the expected categories, the categories that, in any given year, account for between 8 and 12% of the total text. 40% is not a category. 40% is a statement. The report was due on the 15th of March. The statutory deadline is the 15th of March. The deadline has been met every year for 31 consecutive years. Then March came. The report did not. April came. The report did not. A congressional inquiry was filed in May. The response from the department was that the report was undergoing interagency review. June passed. July passed. August passed. By September, 3 senators had submitted formal requests for an explanation of the delay. The response was that the report was undergoing interagency review. The same 6 words, the same procedural language, the same absence of any specific reason. And then, on the 12th of November, 8 months and 27 days after the statutory deadline, the report was released. Not announced, not transmitted with a cover letter, not accompanied by a press briefing. Simply deposited on a Wednesday morning into the public reading rooms of 3 federal archives. No notification went to the congressional offices that had been asking about it. No notification went to the inspectors general who had requested it. No notification went to the press. It was, in the words of one former department official who reviewed it later that afternoon, a release designed to not be noticed. The compliance reports of 2023, 2024, and 2025 had been redacted at 11%, 9%, and 12% respectively. This is the baseline. This is what normal looks like. The 2026 report, released on the 12th of November, was redacted at 41.3%. The shift is not incremental. It is not a drift. It is a wall. A senior archivist with 34 years of experience reviewing federal document releases said, on background, that he had seen this pattern only once before. He declined to specify when. The aid programs covered by the report distribute in aggregate $4.2 billion per year. The compliance review tracks where that money went, what conditions were attached, and whether those conditions were met. When 11% is redacted, $462 million worth of allocations are not described in public detail. When 41.3% is redacted, $1,734 million worth of allocations are not described in public detail. The math is not complicated. The implication is not subtle. What was done to this document was done in sequence. First, the original draft was completed on schedule in late February. Three sources familiar with the drafting process have confirmed this. Second, the draft was forwarded for the standard interagency review, which typically takes between 2 and 4 weeks. Third, the review did not conclude in 4 weeks. It did not conclude in 8. It did not conclude in 12. By June, the document had been forwarded to a secondary review layer, one that is not part of the standard process. By August, a third review layer had been added. Each layer applied its own redactions. The redactions did not replace earlier ones. They accumulated on top of them. By the time the report emerged in November, the cumulative effect was a document in which entire sections, entire program descriptions, entire country-level summaries had been reduced to black geometry. The country sections are where the pattern becomes most legible. Of the 46 countries reviewed in the report, 22 have country sections redacted at over 50%. 6 are redacted at over 75%. 2 are redacted in their entirety, with only the country name and the total dollar figure remaining. The total dollar figure for those two countries, combined, is $683 million. $683 million went somewhere. The compliance review knows where. The compliance review confirms that conditions were either met or not met. The public version of the compliance review will not say which. There is a man named Robert who reads documents like this for a living. He is 64 years old. He spent 28 years at the Government Accountability Office before retiring to take a senior fellowship at a Washington Research Institute. He drives a 1998 Volvo station wagon. He eats lunch at the same Greek diner on Connecticut Avenue every Tuesday. He has reviewed federal compliance documents for so long that he can estimate from the weight of a folder whether the redactions are routine or anomalous. On the afternoon of the 12th of November, a colleague placed the State Department report on his desk. Robert lifted it. He set it down. He opened to a country section he knew well. He read for 40 minutes. He closed the folder. He said one sentence to his colleague. The sentence was this: when a document this thin contains this much black ink, it isn't a report anymore. It's a confession that there's something they can't let us see. Robert is not a partisan. He has worked under 5 administrations from both parties. He has signed off on documents he disagreed with and refused to sign off on documents he was pressured to clear. His judgment in this field is considered uncommonly sober. When Robert says the document is a confession, it is not rhetoric. It is a forensic assessment. The consequences of a release like this do not announce themselves. They radiate outward in slow concentric rings. The first ring is the compliance review itself. Without the redacted sections, the 400 professionals who use this document to do their jobs cannot do them. Inspector General investigations that were waiting on this report cannot proceed. Audits that were scheduled for the first quarter of next year cannot begin. The second ring is congressional. 3 appropriations subcommittees have already requested unredacted briefings. They will not receive them quickly. The third ring is the receiving countries themselves. Foreign governments that depend on these aid flows now face uncertainty about whether next year's allocations will be approved on schedule, because the compliance review that conditions those allocations has been delivered in a form that cannot be used. The fourth ring is the institutional one. Every future compliance report from this department will be read against this one. The baseline has moved. The 11% normal is gone. What replaces it is not yet known. The Congressional Research Service has been asked by at least 7 offices to produce an analysis of the redaction pattern. The analysts who handle these requests are not permitted to speculate on motive. They are permitted to describe pattern. The pattern, when described, is this. The redactions are not distributed evenly across the document. They cluster around 3 specific categories. Allocations made to security partnerships established within the past 18 months. Allocations rerouted from previously designated recipients to new recipients without congressional notification. And allocations whose conditions, as written, would have required certifications that may not have been made. A retired 4-star general who chaired the Joint Chiefs from 2017 to 2019 reviewed a copy of the released report at the request of a former colleague. He read it for 90 minutes in his study in Northern Virginia, beside a window that looks out on a stand of white oaks his wife planted 22 years ago. He set the document down. He did not raise his voice. He said this: "The purpose of a compliance review is to tell the public what was done with their money. When a compliance review tells you 40% of what was done is none of your business, you are no longer being governed. You are being managed." The general's distinction is the one that matters. Governance presumes that the governed have access to the basis on which they are being governed. Management presumes that they do not. A document is a small thing. A redacted document is a small thing. But a redacted document delivered 8 months late, in silence, to a public reading room on a Wednesday morning is something else. It is the visible edge of a process that has decided the public does not need to see. The signature line of this story, the one Diane underlined twice on her yellow legal pad before she had finished reading the first 10 pages, is the line that frames everything that follows. The redactions did not hide the report. The redactions are the report. The redactions are the report. Read that sentence again. 40% of the document is black ink. But the black ink is itself information. The black ink tells you that someone, somewhere, made a decision that this information was more dangerous to release than it was useful to publish. That decision, multiplied across 247 pages, distributed across 46 countries, applied to $1,734,000,000 of allocations, is the actual content of the report. The unredacted portions describe procedure. The redacted portions describe judgment. And the judgment, by its absence, is the loudest thing in the room. There are now 12 formal congressional inquiries open into the release. There are 4 Inspector General reviews underway. There are 7 Freedom of Information Act requests filed by news organizations seeking the unredacted version. The department has indicated that responses will be provided within statutory timeframes, which means, in practical terms, not soon. The next compliance report is due on the 15th of March. Whether it will arrive on the 15th of March or in November or in some other month or in some other form is a question to which no one currently has an answer. The report was due in March. It was released in November. 40% of it is missing. And the missing 40% is the report. The black bars did not redact the document. The black bars are the document. What the State Department could not allow you to read is the thing the State Department most urgently needed you to know existed and could not allow you to know. The deadline was missed because the deadline assumed transparency. The release was silent because the silence was the message. The redactions are the report. There is a principle, older than this department and older than this country, that the people who pay for the work of a government are entitled to know what the work was. The principle has been honored in the field of foreign assistance compliance every year for 31 consecutive years. It was not honored this year. It may not be honored next year. The slow accumulation of small departures from a long-held principle is how principles are quietly retired, not in a single announcement, not in a single confrontation. In the patient laying down of black ink across page after page, in the quiet decision that a deadline will pass, and then pass, and then pass, in the choosing of a Wednesday morning for a release that was designed to attract no notice. The redactions are the report. And the report, when read carefully, says that the relationship between the governed and those who govern them has shifted this year in a way that the next report, whenever it arrives, will be obliged to either correct or confirm. Please hit the bell icon and subscribe my channel for daily updates.